afternoon again, and welcome to the grand final. My name is Eloise, and I'm a student at St Catherine's, and I'm delighted to be your chairperson for this presentation. The questioner today is Ruby, but more on her later. Our speaker is Skyla from Oxford Spires, and she'll be discussing the motion, every child is an artist, and the problem is how to remain an artist once they grow up. She chose this motion because out of all of the ones she was given, she felt it was the most different and the one she could feel most passionate about. Remember, you have 5 minutes. Skyla, the floor is yours.
I suspect less than 10% of you in the room today would consider yourself an artist. I also suspect that over 90% of you have a job that requires some level of creativity. Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once he grows up, so said Picasso. Similar ideas have been echoed by many others, including John Lennon, who said, "Every child is an artist until he is told he is not an artist." Today, I will be looking at 3 questions. What is it about the arts that is so important? Why is it so hard for children to grow up being artists? And what makes it a big deal that we don't all grow up to be one? Not every child grows up to be an accountant, but we don't seem too upset about that. What actually is an artist? I define an artist as someone who is creative. Therefore, the arts are any activity that stimulates creative thinking and doing. So why are these artistic activities such a big deal? Well, they educate and raise awareness on social issues affecting people today, as well as being an archive, revealing the world from thousands of years ago through paintings, pots, and plays. The arts contribute to culture and religion. For example, slaves in Brazil developed the dance capoeira to stay healthy and secretly practice self-defense. Art allows all people, ethnicities, and cultures to be represented and feel valued. Degas summed it up nicely when he said, "It's not what you see, but what you make others see." Art is also healthy. Music can reduce blood pressure and improve cognitive function. Research from UCL has shown that watching a live performance can have the same impact on your heart as 30 minutes of cardio exercise. People who own businesses or have filed patents are 8 times more likely to have been involved in the arts as a child. Therefore, the arts also contribute to the economy. So, why are children more artistic and creative than most adults? In a child's mind, anything is possible. You're less limited by social standards. No one wants to crush your dream of becoming a unicorn. But over time, you receive constant reminders to grow up, get good grades, earn an income. Less time is left for daydreams and fantasy. And here lies the issue. The arts are expensive. They are viewed as a luxury, not a necessity. So what's the solution? Take my own school, a state school, where many students come from some of the 10% most deprived areas of the UK. I'm lucky that my school values the artistic subject alongside the academic subjects. I've had opportunities to do dance, music, drama, and not to forget countless public speaking competitions. I may not become an artist or an actress, but having these chances gives me a toolbox that I can carry with me through any job that requires creativity. Shouldn't everyone have such chances? Unfortunately, over the last decade, the government has cut £400 million from annual local authority spending on the arts. With less opportunity to be creative, children won't grow up to be artists. Children who attend private schools have a greater chance of participating in the arts and benefiting from them. 67% of British Oscar winners went to a private school, yet just 6% of students are privately educated. It's not just jobs in the arts that require you to be creative. Over 65% of judges, leading journalists, and the current cabinet members went to private schools. And the last one certainly requires the ability to be creative with the truth. We need to make more time for the arts. In the UK, just over 600,000 students out of 5.3 million choose to study a creative subject, a drop of nearly 40% from 5 years ago. Before technology, it would be normal to sit down and paint or play a musical instrument for relaxation. But now, often, our default is screens. Adults should also participate in the arts without the pressure of society. Practicing an art, no matter how well or badly, is a way to make your soul grow, as Kurt Vonnegut said. To remain artists, adults need to have somewhere to be artists. There needs to be encouragement for adults to participate in the arts. Essentially, more opportunity for adults to just be childlike. Picasso wanted adults to be artists, and our society needs it. Art brings joy, art fuels creative thinking, art builds the economy. Actress Skyla Adler said, "Life beats down and crushes the soul, and art reminds you that you have one. And the earth without art, well, that's just air." Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech, Skyla. Ruby is the questioner for today. She's my fellow student from St. Catherine's, and I know she'll be able to answer all of your audience's questions before you've even asked them. Ruby, you have 4 minutes. Good luck.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to be the questioner for this presentation that Skyla is so clearly passionate about. And I am now going to help expand the speech by asking some questions for the audience. First, I'd like to ask, do you think that there is a lack of artists nowadays? And how can we improve this if there is?
I don't think there's a lack of artists, but I think that lots of artists who we do have now have had, like I mentioned, the privilege of being able to go to a private school or have had some sort of more privileged education. And I think we need to encourage students who might not think that they have a chance because they've gone to lower education to be artists. So I think we just need to have more a change of social mindset that encourages anyone to be artists.
And as a follow-up from that, how could you decrease this divide between people who went to private schools and people who went to state schools?
I think it comes down to funding for the arts. Our school is very lucky to have all these chances, but many schools don't have that. If the government allowed more funding for schools to spend money on all of these activities, that would help a huge amount.
Thank you. So you also mentioned that art is an archive. And do you believe that this quote is as relevant today as when it was first said? Because art shows history and its relevance in the past as well.
Yeah, I definitely think even maybe more now than in the past, because we know we can be educated and learn from the arts about things we never knew were possible or never had happened, and that can widen our understanding, not just of artistic subjects, but perhaps in the science and the maths departments, about mathematicians and scientists in the past who have helped us in the society that we are now.
And do you think that art has a more prevalent place in our society than science or research, or is it equally important?
I think they're equally important. Combined, they are most powerful. Often, educational systems now refer to the words STEAM instead of STEM. Science, technology, and engineering, arts, and maths. Oh, that's a handful. And I think it's really important to not acknowledge them as separate things because they are combined.
That's really interesting. I never knew that, actually. So the growing use of social media in today's society, do you think that that impacts a child's creativity or artistic ability?
Yeah, I had some research that students or children, and mostly teenagers, spend, you'd be surprised, over 6 hours on their phones a day. And I think that how much of that time could be spent, even if you just spent half of that time doing something creative, that would be so beneficial to so many children.
Thank you. And what solutions could you offer to help tackle the lack of passion in artists' youth today?
There needs to be more encouragement. I mentioned it briefly in my speech. For adults, shouldn't have to feel the pressure of society to not be able to do something because they're not good enough or they don't earn money from it. I mean, it would be great if we could just turn this into a giant playground. And I think that it's not that there aren't the opportunities, but there's this stigma around, oh, well, adults can't be childlike because they have other responsibilities.
And some people do not feel like they are very creative or artistic. Do you think these people should be encouraged to take part in arts, even if they don't want to?
I definitely think they should be encouraged. I mean, for example, how many of you were, yay, I've got maths next, and still we have to do that. And it's maybe important to make the arts a compulsory subject in school, perhaps, so that children are more stimulated to be creative, and then they might find that that's actually something that they really enjoy.
Sorry, that was all we've got time for. I'd like to open questions up to the floor if there are any. Yes, middle.
You mentioned the effect that screens and cuts to funding have had on creativity. Do you believe our generation will help or hinder the rejuvenation of artistic adults?
That is a good question. I don't think it'll help or hinder, but I think it'll just change. I mean, art now, it's so educational for social issues that were around the past but maybe have not been allowed to be spoken about because there have been consequences. And now with all this new freedom, art just simply changes, and with a new generation come new ideas. So yeah, I think that's how the art might change.
Yes, over there in the middle.
Every book you see in a bookshop, there's like 100 people who didn't make it. And so because it's so hard to get into all these subjects, the acting, the music, all that industry, doesn't it mean that probably people aren't pushing it as much because they don't want people to end up like with no income issues?
Yeah, I think that's also a very important point to raise. However, art doesn't only need to be competitive. It can be something we do just because we enjoy it. I think there's a lot of sort of pressure on, if you're going to do music, well, then you might as well become a professional. But I don't think you can just play piano or you can just act because you want to, not because it's something you see yourself doing in the future.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm a believer that art is very powerful in changing people's opinions and so on. Do you believe that like an increase in art in society would change the rest of society in any way? For example, like propaganda and so on. And therefore, like, does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes sense. I think it would be good to increase art, but we also have to be careful in the messages we spread in art, because of course art is very powerful. And I think if we increase art in discussing social issues, that will help, but also art isn't only about sort of promoting these ideas, it's also for yourself. I mean, I don't always paint and think, I want to talk about feminism in this painting, but I still enjoy it, so it doesn't only have to be about spreading a message.
I'm sorry, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for those questions. I admire you both for speaking so eloquently and confidently, so thank you. I think, to sum up, Skyla answered 3 very important questions in her speech, which were as follows. Why are the arts so important? Why is it hard for children to grow up believing that they can be artists? And what makes it a big deal that we don't all grow up to be artists? Ruby managed to ask some amazing questions that I'm sure the audience were thinking of. And my favourite was about funding for the arts, and which you answered, the divide between schools. That was a very valid point, so thank you. Churchill said, "If it weren't for painting, I couldn't live. I couldn't bear with the stress." And I think that highlights the importance of the arts that Skyla has been telling us all about today. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Churchill College for hosting the grand finals. And thank you to the audience for listening so attentively. And special thanks to Skyla, our guest speaker. And that brings our presentation to a close. Thank you.